What's up guys, Chris here, and in this video, we'll take a look at the next 3 months in War of the Visions and help you develop a plan for which banners to pull on as a free-to-play or light spender. And sorry I haven't been making a lot of videos lately, but I'm not really the fan of the raids, so I've been taking a little extra time lately to finally play the Final Fantasy VII Remake. I'm about 15 hours in, and let me tell you, it's simply awesome. I'm not really a Final Fantasy VII fanboy. Don't get me wrong, I think the original game was great, but I can safely say that whether or not you played the original, or even whether or not you're a Final Fantasy person, which you're watching this video, so why wouldn't you be? The Final Fantasy VII Remake is amazing. The graphics are amazing, the extra characterization and added dialogue is amazing. Combat is fun, and it's just awesome to see what they've done expanding on this universe, so I highly recommend it to anyone. Alright, back to War of the Visions, and let's talk about the upcoming units. You guys know the drill, like and subscribe for more War of the Visions content, and let's jump into it. So the first unit we're going to talk about here is Warrior of Light. So obviously, this is the current banner that's going on, and you've probably already decided whether or not you're going for Warrior of Light, but if you haven't decided yet, the basic rule here is if you don't already have a tank, like if you already haven't built up Engelbert, or even if you haven't built up Mont, because Mont will work serviceably as a tank, you can go ahead and try and pull for Warrior of Light, and they're giving away a lot of shards. Like, it's not too hard to max limit break him, but one of the things you do need to watch out for is this next character we're about to talk about. Kilphe comes out this week, I believe, which means it'll sort of muddle the shard pool in the shop, so you just have to watch out for that when trying to get him up to limit break 5, and try not to run right up to the end of the event to try and get his shards. Alright, let's move on to Kilphe, which you've probably already seen her shards available as the login bonus for this month. And Kilphe is going to be an Earth Mage, and I talked about her in my last planning guide, but Kilphe is going to be an Earth Mage, and she's basically an Orlandeau killer. So that's her primary purpose, is for PvP and being really useful at killing Orlandeau and also Frederica. So if you're really tired of fighting Orlandeaus and Fredericas, Kilphe will absolutely destroy them. And not only that, she has a huge magic stat, as you can see here, 114, 144, 56. I think her magic is a little bit, her base magic's going to be higher than Medieina, but I think she ends up being a little bit lower just because of the master ability that Medieina has, that plus 30 magic. Either way, she's going to be an Earth Mage. She has defense penetration. She does a ton of damage, so she's a good mage unit. And if you're focused on PvP, that's where I would look at this banner and I would pull for her, because having Kilphe on your team gives you a lot of flexibility to be able to target people who have Orlandeau now instead of trying to be afraid of them. So that's always nice when you're trying to climb the arena ladder or in Guild Wars, for example. If you're focused more on PvE, I think you could pass on Kilphe. I think there's a few other units that are going to come out a little bit later, and I would save my Visuor up for them, particularly Final Fantasy Tactics 2, which we'll talk about in a second. Alright, let's move on to Oldor, and my opinion on Oldor hasn't changed since the last planning guide. I did a lot of research into Oldor, and I watched a lot of YouTube videos and people who will advocate for actually saying that Oldor is a good unit. And don't get me wrong, she's a really good unit. But like I said in my last video, I'm going to double down on this and say she doesn't provide you anything new that you don't already have in other units. So this is probably the reason I wouldn't pull on this banner. I think of all the characters I'm going to cover in this planning guide, she's probably the least good of all of them, just overall. And also, I'm not crazy about her design. I know some people like her design. I actually don't like her character design all that much. I'm just not, I don't know, I just don't get this character design as much as some of the other characters in this game. Don't get me wrong, Oldor is going to do a lot of damage. She's going to be even more effective if you have, like, for example, the Tetrasylphid card. So, like I said, one of the times I might pull on this banner is if you already have, like, Lucia and Ayaka and Sasha built up, like you're building an all-wind team and you have a high-level Tetrasylphid card. Oldor is going to fit in there nicely, but I just think she doesn't provide you anything that other units don't already have. The soldier job, Sterne already has the soldier job. Viking, you're going to get Yerma, who already has this as a primary job. Although this assassin job is interesting as a sub job, which makes her kind of useful for defense penetration and some other abilities. But overall, I think this is going to be the worst unit, so I say it's a no-go for free-to-play or light spenders, particularly because her banner comes right on the heels of Final Fantasy Tactics 2. So let's talk about Agrias and Delita. I got the pronunciation right this time, guys. Agrias is going to be a damage unit. I don't use her as a tank. I mentioned this in the first planning guide, but she's not going to be a tank unit. She is tanky, but you don't want to use her as a tank. Agrias is one of the best overall units still in Japan, so save up your Visuor from the Oldor banner and don't spend it on that. Spend it on Final Fantasy Tactics 2 if you're looking at this. Also, we all know how awesome her character design is. She does a lot of damage, and her biggest advantage, though, is that on a lot of her skills, if we look down in her skills from her main job, she does a lot of status effects. So you're going to have stop on her abilities. She's going to have silence. She's also got this full break ability, which is just ridiculous. It reduces 4 different stats: attack, magic, defense, and spirit. So this ability, combined with some of these other status effects, really makes her a potent unit, as well as doing really good damage and being extremely tanky. Probably one of the best units to come out in the next 3 months here. And now let's talk about Delita. You might actually end up pulling for Delita, and I still think that they might guarantee Delita in global for like 20,000 Visuor or something like that. I'm going to hold on to that hope, although a lot of people still say I'm crazy for this. He's going to end up being basically a fire version of Ramza. He'll do more damage than Ramza, but be less effective as a support, but I would just think of him that way. If you're choosing between Delita and Agrias, I would go for Agrias. I think she'll be a lot better overall. The only reason I would go for Delita is if you want to build like a fire team in the future, or if you have no effective fire units, you might want to go for Delita if you already have ice units like Gilgamesh or Medina that are really effective and you don't really need Agrias. All right, let's move on from Final Fantasy Tactics and let's talk about Irdilla, and she's going to be a calculator unit, which is very unique. I talked about her in the July planning guide. She's going to do pretty good damage to a lot of different units on the battlefield, but it sometimes can be finicky to target with her abilities. And I know that some of the people on JP that have talked about using her is like, sometimes you'll get in these situations where like you have to do damage on a turn to prevent one of your characters from going down or to kill a boss before losing, and she just can't find a way to target them with her. So she can be finicky to use, but she can also be extremely overpowered in certain situations. So she's going to be a magic unit. So if you don't have a lot of mages, she might be a good substitute for that, but I don't think she's going to be a primary substitute for that. I also think her character design is pretty cool, so she's got that going for her. However, knowing the banners that are coming after her, I'm going to say for free-to-play and light spenders, I wouldn't push on this banner. I would just say if you do end up pulling her in the future on like random 10 times pulls or when you're trying to pull on another banner, she's definitely worth building up. But for me, I'm going to be avoiding this banner, and that's only because of some of the units that are coming up in the future. All right, let's move on to Emo Sterne or Golden Sterne or Dark Sterne or whatever you want to call him. I'm just going to lead off with this. Dark Sterne for a free-to-play or light spenders is an absolute no-go, and the main reason for this is that he's a premium unit just like Gilgamesh. His shards are going to cost twice as much, so they're going to be 100 apiece, which is about 60,000 Visuor the max amount. And as free-to-play or light spenders, we just have to be a little bit smarter with our Visuor. And it's not to say that he isn't a really good unit. He is. He's an absolute tank buster. He destroys Warrior of Light and Engelbert. He does an absurd amount of damage. He's got a lot of range on his abilities. He's got a lot of versatility. He's one of the best units in the game, but for the amount of Visuor that it costs to max him out, I would rather have 2 other ultra rares maxed out, because as free to play we need to be as versatile as possible. And I just think that if you do pull him, for sure farm his hard quest and then figure out how to use him a year and a half from now when you get enough shards to use him. But for free to play, absolute no-go. And that brings us to the next banner, which is going to be Laswell and Glaciela. Laswell you remember from Final Fantasy Brave Exvius, and one of the primary reasons I actually would pull for Laswell is because he's a really cool unit design. I mean, look at this art. I think the artwork for Laswell is extremely well done in War of the Visions, and I think this might actually be one of the best character arts that they've done altogether. So he's got cool unit written all over him, so he's got that going for him. So should you actually pull for him, well yeah, Laswell's going to be a really good unit. Laswell is going to be kind of like a beefed up samurai. One of the reasons why I don't like going for him as a free-to-play player is that you'll see this sword in his artwork here, and this is actually an ultra rare katana that was available through a raid, I believe. And we all know how raids go, so even as free-to-play, you're really going to have a perfect setup to build up this katana that's going to be good for him. Otherwise, you're going to be stuck using a suboptimal katana for him. So kind of like how Rain needed that crimson sword built up to really bring him out and make him a great unit. Laswell's going to be kind of the same. He's just going to be a good ultra rare character unless you have this katana from the raid to really draw out his full potential. Those free-to-play or light spenders or somebody who maybe is a little more casual with the game, I wouldn't expect to have this katana all built up for him, and I would just sort of expect that he's not going to be an optimal unit for free-to-play, but he is a really cool unit. This means that I'm just going to wait until I pull Laswell later on a 10 times banner or something like that, and then I'm going to build him from there, but I'm not going to be pulling on the banner. And the other reason I'm not going to pull on Laswell's banner is that Glaciela comes at this exact same time, and I think she's going to be way more worth it to pull on. All indications from JP players and from all of the gameplay that I've seen from her, she is the next absolute game-breaking unit, just kind of like Orlandeau is. She's going to be good at PvP, she's good at PvE, she's good at pretty much everything. So after the Final Fantasy Tactics banner, this is probably the unit as free-to-play or light spenders if you're really looking for a unit that's going to be the quote-unquote best unit coming up. Glaciela is going to fit the bill. She's a water unit. She's got this Valkyrie main job, which we'll get into in a second. She's got the ninja sub job, which is probably the best sub job in terms of both skills and stats. And then she's got this monk sub job, which is going to give her some attack. Which, speaking of her attack, she's got 157 on her base character, another 52 from her board, so that's like 209 and another 123. So if you're doing your math there, her attack's like 330 something, which is one of the highest attacks in the entire game, I believe. The other reason that Glaciela is going to be really good is that super high attack, but one of the other characters we talked about, remember Warrior of Light, is going to be the primary tank that's running around at this point. He has a 20% weakness to Pierce, so Glaciela is going to absolutely destroy Warrior of Light. In addition, let's look at some of her skills here. You've got two abilities that increase agility, so this is going to make her a fast unit in addition to doing a ton of damage. You can always use Shikuchi in the ninja sub job to increase her move and jump. And then she's got this counter ability that not only does damage but also decreases attack, so it's like a power break on a counter ability. That's a really good counter ability. But really where she ends up being the best unit is when we look at her job abilities here. You have this War Maiden's Eyes, and I don't know what this will be called in Global, but this is probably one of the best TP abilities we'll see in the game, which increases her Pierce attack up to 25% for three turns, which is actually better than increasing attack because of how the damage calculation works. Then you also increase defense penetration up to 50 defense penetration on her, so she pretty much ignores defense, another reason why she's going to be a tank buster and completely destroy Warrior of Light. Not only that, but she's also got this high damage ability right here that is 100% accuracy, so she can counter evasion units. She has this leap strike, which gives her some mobility, lets her move to a target panel, so you can move her up to, I believe, 7 spaces in one turn, which is pretty crazy. And then lastly, she's got this triple piercer ability, which is basically like Lucia's quad shot or like Ramsa's triple strike, which hits 3 times and lets you create chains as well. She's also got this ability here, Paris Cross, which again, I don't know what this will be called in Global, but it's an AoE, kind of AoE, hits every square that's diagonal to her, which can inflict paralyze, so she can do status effects in addition to everything else that she does. So Glaciela is going to be one of the most powerful characters overall to come out in the next 3 months, and this is one of the ones I'm going to save up for in addition to Final Fantasy Tactics. Those are the two that I'm targeting, but Glaciela is overall going to be very game-breaking in terms of actual performance, and she's also a pretty cool character design to boot. I mean, come on, she looks awesome, the artwork's done pretty well here as well. And the last thing I'm going to mention here, which you guys have probably already seen, is that in Japan they just launched Final Fantasy IV with Cecil, Kain, and Rosa. And I'm not going to get into that in this video, but it's just something to look forward to probably at the end of November or the beginning of January. There's a lot of people that speculate they'll leave December open in global for Christmas units or some kind of Christmas event. So we can expect that Final Fantasy IV to hit probably the end of November if they push it up like they did with Rain, or they'll just push it back and put it right at the beginning of January probably. Anyways, let me know if you guys have any questions about any of these units, and hopefully this helps you guys plan for the next few months, and thanks for stopping by.